Is there anything more soul quenching than creating authentic space to sit around the table, have a conversation with women you love? And that's exactly how I feel about the two of you. My girl, Jen Thibodeau, my girl, Leslie Marlin, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for pulling up a seat today and joining us at the kitchen table.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. So great to be here.
Mm,
Love you both.
yes, love you both. So, I was thinking about you both this morning. If your mind's like mine, 75 tabs, never ends. Right? And I was thinking about, I just started listening to this content from Anne Shockett. I'm going to link it, guys, in the show notes below so you can check it out. And she was the editor in chief of 17. And she's now created this whole movement around this loneliness epidemic. And especially for women, she's done this research that 80% of women report feeling lonely because of their jobs. And I was thinking to myself, wow, I've really struggled with that. And I've had to be really intentional to create space to sit across a room from women that was not contingent on receiving anything, that wasn't contingent on a business outcome. And that's how I met you two beautiful women. And I would love to ask you both, what does that mean to you? This thing of loneliness, this creating a hype tribe that meets you where you're at. Leslie, you take the ball first, my girl.
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it's so interesting that you started with loneliness because I was
Mm,
just in a conversation this morning for work, right? Or where we're developing some training content and content for leaders. And I was talking to this individual about who was helping me kind of flesh it out about loneliness. And she was
mm,
talking about like the Surgeon General's really efforts in this space. And really what we were talking about, and it really got me thinking, is that sort of need for connection, right? We're
mm,
all human beings and how we are kind of wired for that connection. And how we, as friends, we've talked a lot about that soul food and that soul time, right? There is nothing like being with the two of you, right?
mm,
Virtually or even better in person, and being able to just sort of share time and space. And so I have become more and more in just tune with how important that is and
mm,
how to carve out time and space to make that happen with the people that I choose to make it happen with.
Mm,
mm.
mm.
Yeah.
Meg, let me say it's really interesting that you ask about loneliness because I think for anyone who knows me who's listening, they might be surprised to hear that I do feel lonely from time to time. And I am very much an extroverted person. I'm very intentional with my time
Mm,
outside of my day job. But I started working remotely well before the pandemic in 2017. And I remember thinking, okay, I need to find something to get me out of the house and connect me with other like minded people. And I
mm,
started going to these bar method exercise classes, which was my soul food at the time. I met this great group of women. We'd go 5 days a week, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, but we bound out of bed because that was our thing. Then in time, when I created my own platform with JMT Speaks, really part of it was because I wanted to, yes, formalize a space to be a storyteller, but I
mm,
knew how much I loved going out and connecting with people and meeting people and really nurturing real relationships from whether it was a speaking engagement or attending events, because I know that I need that, and I know it makes me
mm.
a better person on so many fronts. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because I think we need to normalize the feeling that a lot of us do experience this, even if it's least expected.
Yeah. And you can be, this is one thing I've realized. You can, and I've struggled with this myself as I've navigated my own journey and who am I in all of it. You can be in a sea of people and you can look to have a lot of friends and you can still be lonely. Like Les, I love when you said it's people I choose to, because that evolves, doesn't it? Your tribe evolves as you evolve, and it's can be terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does evolve. And I think it necessarily has to evolve, right? And
Mm,
even for me, right, like you, Jen, I'm a bit of an extrovert, although people might think that or might not think it, right? I get my kind of energy and drive from being around people. But for me, the learning over the years has been around sort of that connection and how to choose people, because I am truly like an independent person, right? And the people who know me would say, she's got, even my husband's like, she like don't like to do it alone too much, right? Right. I do. And there's a whole variety of reasons for that. But for me, learning how to connect and how to
mm,
be connected and who to connect with is an ongoing journey, but it is one that has made my life deeper and richer. And I'm
mm,
sure we'll continue that way.
Well, we are all women over a certain number, right? And I don't know how you both feel, but at this stage in my life, I feel like it is about the quality of the connections I have, not the quantity. The connections and friendships. And I have been so blessed over 40, and both of you are included in this handful of women I have met that
mm,
I never thought I'd develop such genuine, close relationships with other women over the age of 40, because my close circle is very small. So I still feel so fortunate that at this time in my life, like you were saying, Leslie, like I'm still evolving and I'm still meeting people, but so
mm,
intentional with the people that are close to me, and so grateful that I've met women like the two of you that I feel like I've known forever and will know forever
mm,
because of the whole soul sister and tribe vibe, like you mentioned before, Meg.
mm. I love that. As you're both talking, I just have this whole flash to the self-awareness that all three of us have, and we've had in these conversations about our journeys and our struggles and our lessons and how we want to show up in the world. And the storytelling in conjunction with that, I've been fortunate enough to sit in rooms with both of you and hear you speak and hear you share your stories. And you've now put it into pen and paper with this beautiful book with 30 women sharing your stories. And I would love, there she is. Own your story, baby. Own your story. Empower, connect. There she is. Create change. And I would love to ask you both, and Jen, you take this first. It is hard to be self aware. It is hard to learn your story, and hell, it's even harder to share it. Talk to us about your journey in this discovery, in this sharing your story, and what story you shared, like how it all came to be and how you put it out in the world.
Let me see if I can answer that briefly
Yeah, I
because I
know.
feel
I
like
know
I
that's
could
a
talk
loaded
about
question,
that.
right? That's a
I feel
loaded
like I could talk about that. This will turn into a therapy session on me. So let me try and focus my thoughts to
Mhm,
say it's really interesting that I now call myself a storyteller,
mhm,
because for a really long time, I think I had imposter syndrome of sorts and thought, I don't have a story. I haven't overcome some horrible disease and fought for my life. I'm not in recovery from something. I'm just this privileged white woman. I'm a suburban mom. I'm an attorney. Like, what story do I possibly have? But then I realized, well, the people who have those other stories, their stories certainly are inspirational and count. So does mine, right? Like
mm,
my story is going to resonate with someone. And I started to realize, as well, as I first spoke at the Empowered Women's event, that was the impetus for this book that we all have met through that event in Susan Freeman. I realized that every day there's a different story in your life, and just sharing one experience, one
mm,
something is going to resonate with someone. So whether it's that 15-minute TEDx style talk that I gave in Chicago about my journey to and from partnership at a law firm, to what I ultimately wrote about in the book about being diagnosed with a chronic condition, or what I wrote about today, on my newsletter about how I like had this epic fail of a Target run and like forgot things in the parking lot and went back and didn't pay, like the whole thing. Each one of those little stories is going to resonate. It's going to affect someone and have impact in some way and make us realize we are all more alike than different. So for me, taking charge of the big and little stories in my life has been empowering. And it's brought up a lot of emotions, but on balance, I'm so glad that I've stepped into it and owned my story and stepped into my power. That's
Mm.
my 2 cents.
Now you go, Les. You take that loaded question and beautifully unpack it. Wait, Jen, I love how you succinctly shared what can be a lifelong journey.
Yeah. And it is such a loaded question. I too could speak on it for a long time, so I'll try to be brief, right? I didn't come to sort of storytelling naturally or sort of by choice. I came sort of picking and fighting it a little bit. Um, Storytelling was first brought to my attention when I worked with an executive coach a number of years ago. Who in one session was like, when I said I want sort of bigger, broader impact, one session she was like, okay, let's talk about storytelling. And I'm like, no, but that has nothing to do with what I do. Like, no way, no, right. And I had to really open kind of my mind and be a little curious. And I started reading and I started learning and I watched about how Disney creates their movies, right? And I was like, oh, this actually is interesting. And then found Susan Freeman and her Empowered Women event. But even before that, with the Association of Corporate Counsel, they had done this TED Masterclass series, and it was during the pandemic. I was going through coach training with Martha Beck's organization, and then I saw this TED Masterclass program, and so I applied and signed up and did it. Unbeknownst to me, part of what we had to do, we got the learning and we got to listen to sort of these amazing kind of classes because I love to learn about how these TED speakers create their talks. I then like was the expectation of us was that we create and share a TED talk, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And it was during the pandemic, and so they were like, record it virtually. At the overachiever that I am, I was like, yeah, okay. So I hired a videographer, and I like, because I had to do it my way, right? Like if I would have, and I, because of what I do professionally, I have always, until that the line's pretty kind of solid. But there's my work world, here's my personal world. Never the twain shall meet, right? And this was the first time that I blurred the lines just a little bit, only a little bit, and very strategically, right? And what was fascinating to me was how it resonated with people. And I had spoken to someone kind of in advance who had kind of connected me with the guy who did the video and, helped me work through that. And she said, when I first started speaking publicly, like, I had that same sort of feeling, but I had to overcome it. And I've learned like, it draws you to people, and back to that connection, it connects you more to people. And as I, put that like one short video out into the world, right, people saw it and started really, they feel connected to you, maybe in a way that's true or maybe in a way that's not, but it started building more relationships and opening more connections and doors, right? And then, spoke at the Empowered Women event and went, more into sort of the personal storytelling. Again, the type A perfectionist in me was like, well, if I'm going to do this, right, so I hired a speaking coach who helped me, right? And it was amazing. And she has become a dear friend, right? And she pushed me and really challenged me to sort of learn and grow. And then ultimately we got to the book, and I did tell the same story in the book that I told on stage at the Empowered Women event. But what I will say is, because Jennifer and I were working with Susan on the book, I knew that if I didn't really want to share it, I could pull out at the last minute because we were behind the scenes. And so I really did. I agonized and agonized over whether to let it go into the universe. And I ultimately decided, kind of to what you said, Jen, a few minutes ago, if my story will resonate with one person, just one person, it matters. And it is my truth. And that part of this learning and self-growth and self-awareness is being more comfortable in that. And as I become more comfortable with my own story, right, that has enriched the connections and the relationships for me, but personally with the two of you, right? For example, but also professionally as I show up and do the work that I like to do professionally.
You know, Leslie, as you're talking, I had this whole flash to my own journey where I was never aware enough because I was so task driven. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I was so head down in the tasks and the things that I never rose up from it to share anything about myself in any of these professional settings I was in. And my sisters, I was in this corporate space with the same company for over 15 years. And do you think I knew anything about the people that I worked alongside? Nah. I know who to go to get things, but I knew nothing about them as humans. And I was just reading this stat, this research that 46% of Americans have said they felt their loneliest at work. And it wasn't until I started to share these little micro things about myself in conversation did this beautiful ripple impact begin to change. And I got to know these people as humans, but it began with me. And Leslie, as you're talking about, I had to do it my way. I had to slowly begin to share my story and the ripple impact that it had. I would love to ask the both of you, to our listener, that might be feeling the way that we are, once were, this sort of separation of church and state of who they are and how they share it. What is one micro tool that you can give them that they can start to show up as human with those that they work beside and build these sort of human connection in these micro moments? Jen, do you want to go first?
Sure. So let me, if I may, answer that with a short story, if I can. So, when I was a partner back at the law firm, I had made this mistake that I thought was going to get me, fired from this case, right? We were defending a multi-million-dollar class action. I was in charge of expert deposition preparation, and one of the experts was a metallurgist who, if you don't know what that is, because I didn't, is a mechanical engineer who works with metals. So you can only imagine like how difficult it is to actually understand a report that he's written and get prepared and put on your opposing counsel hat and try and come up with questions he's going to be asked. But we did it. We were ready. The day of the dep prep came and the room was set up with the schematics and the physical evidence. But the only thing missing was the expert. Why? Because I had messed up the date. I had been on my phone really early, early or late at night, I don't remember which, and didn't scroll all the way down to see that he was changing when he was coming in. And I was horrified. So I had to tell my team, was just glad that we were early for once with everything we had to get done. But I had to call the client in California. And because at the time he was just going to join remotely by telephone for portions of the day. And I was absolutely terrified of what he was going to say because he was this really tough customer. Put on my big girl pants, call him. I simply and honestly told him what happened. I remember before the call thinking, I just have to be honest. That's all I have. And he takes it or leaves it. Whatever he does with it, he does. I tell him what happened. There's this long pause and he's like, huh, so you finally made a mistake and show the rest of us you're human. Don't worry about it. From that day forward, our relationship really shifted because he had taught me such a lesson about valuing vulnerability. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I just knew we could joke around with each other a little bit more, let our hair down. I mean, we're still respectful, professional, all the things, but because I had allowed him to see this crack in my armor, the relationship totally changed. So I guess the point of my story, and I will land the plane, is just don't be afraid to let other people see that you are human, whatever that small thing is. There's no need to over explain or over apologize. Like, you get to decide whether, when, and how much you share, but to just embrace the truth with someone really goes a long way. So that's my micro step.
I love that. I love that. And I think in terms of my micro step, it's a little more mechanical, right? Like, make a list, right? What are the things you're comfortable sharing? And maybe what are the things you're not comfortable sharing, right? And being able to sort of know for you where that line is. And over time, that line may shift, right? But I always go, because I'm in a people business, right? And what I do is really people related, kind of ironically, since I like to do a lot of things alone. I go into conversations and try to sort of find out kind of where other people are and then meet them where they are and share a little bit of myself. And I guess you might be able to say it's modeling, right? Be able to sort of, so if I can sense like they say something about, their weekend and kids, I might say, share something about my kids, or if they like, I could try to sort of meet them where they are. And I think for me, another sort of micro step is just sort of showing up and holding space, right?
Mm.
And if we can show up and hold space for people, they then become more open. And as you engage in it, right, you then I have found I become more comfortable myself in knowing who I am, what I'm comfortable sharing, what I'm not. And that varies among different people, right? There are some people I will share more with and some people I won't. And it depends on the context and the setting.
God, I love that. And what both of you shared made me flash to just being human. Like you said, Jen, there's somebody, you ever do this where you feel like you need to make up a whole long big thing versus just saying like I'm tired or I don't feel like it or whatever the truth is. And I gotta tell you, last year, I don't to your point earlier, Jen, I don't know if it came with the wisdom that comes with aging and the freedom
Mhm.
of it or the self-awareness. I just stopped giving a shit about making up a whole long lie and I just told the truth. Like, I listen, I can't take this call right now. Can we move this call because I am just exhausted? And I want to give you the bandwidth that you deserve. Now, I know you can't do that in every situation, but even if you need to push back 15 minutes, hey, can you give me 15 minutes so I can give you the bandwidth that you deserve? There's something in telling the truth.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I want to tie together, if I can, with something I think what you both said. Leslie touched on, kind of massaging your message for your audience a little
Mm.
bit. You're maybe more honest and open with certain people than others. And Meg, what you said about, the level of detail, whether it's the truth or this whole big thing about why you're exhausted. I think that's a really important point too. Like, I think people overshare because they want to be authentic and they want to say, I can't make this call at this time because fill in the blank. I'm exhausted. I want to go to my yoga class. The sitter was late. The dog is sick. I have to go to the vet. I've had this horrible
Mm.
morning. There was so much traffic. Right? They're giving you all this information when you could still be honest and authentic and just say, oh my God, I've had a hell of a morning. There are people you can say that to, maybe that you work with or friends or people you can get into more of that detail, the honest detail about, the whole shit show that's been your morning or your day. So I think people sometimes overdo too much because they want to be honest when it's not always necessary. And it almost stresses and burdens the other person too, to hear it all.
Mhm.
Oh, I love that. That just makes me flash. There is a huge difference. Like our world loves buzzwords, don't we? Burnout, self-care,
Mm.
vulnerability, all the things. There is a difference between vulnerability and sharing from a place of authenticity and just flipping vomiting on people.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
would love to ask you both because listen, in this world, as women and juggling all the things and having these careers and doing these things for us outside of just the job, but you're both mothers and all of the things and all of the details that brings when you have those people that come into your world and circle that give you that anxiety, that are those vomit on you people that take up a lot of your energy, how do you create space to not let that consume you?
Great question. For me, I try to put it in a box,
Mm.
right? And I try to understand that they're human too, right? And that they may, for whatever reason, lack the self-awareness, have other things going on, right? To try to, one of the things I value, and I talk to my kids about this all the time, is kindness. So I try to show up from a place of kindness, but I also know that the negative energy drains me. And so I have to put it in a box, right? And, I've got something going on right now that is just like toxic and draining on me, right? And I'm like putting it in a box, right? So that I can show up here, for example, in this space and get that positive energy, right? Because that's what fuels me. That's
Mm.
what lights my fire. I don't need that other stuff, right? And so I have to be intentional in what I choose to let take up my headspace. And when I hear it, like when I was running this morning and I was like, nope, we're going to shift. And we're going to think about this conversation we have coming up later today and how I'm looking forward to that.
Ooh, girl, you are
You hit
taking me
the
to
nail on the head.
church.
Yeah. Preach,
Preach.
right?
Yeah.
Preach. She hit the nail on the head. I mean, the two words that came to mind for me were intentionality and boundaries when you asked her questions. It's about being intentional in the space that you hold for others and yourself. And I think I have to remember, Leslie mentioned compassion. I try to be curious, why is this person like this? What's going on with them? What might have happened to them? Why are they the way they are? But at the same time, I'm not a therapist. I can't help I can't help everyone all the time in the right way. So I have to hold boundaries and, make space, make it limited, but also really show up for the people I want with the energy I need to and want to show up for them, my husband, my son, my colleagues. So yeah, boxes, love it.
I love it. As
And
you
I
both
think
were, oh, go ahead, Les, please.
I was going to say, I think as we think about how to show up, right, it takes me back to what you said earlier, Meg, about self awareness, right? We have to understand kind of where we are and what's working for us, what isn't, what's taking place in our heads and our bodies, right? And be able to sort of figure that out and create space to either let it happen or put it in a box and deal with it later, right? So that we can be, that intentionality, show up with intentionality, as you said, Jen, and to be able to have those boundaries and get what we want. So that's just what I thought of as I listened.
Les, as you were saying that, girl, you must have been walking around up in here, up in my brain, because I literally wrote down self-awareness because you too, and I know all three of us, and we've talked about this, the journey to become self-aware. And man, it is fucking hard. We love to put it on an Instagram post. We love to put a hashtag around it. Be your authentic self. Bah, bah, bah. That shit is hard, and that takes a lot of work. And I would love to ask you both for the individual listening that could be in wherever they are in their journey that thinks the same thing. Well, I don't know really who I am. I don't know what tribe I want to be in. I don't know what story I have to share there. The world has become so loud that they have lost themselves in it all. What would be a nugget that you would give that person to say, here's a beautiful way to find yourself or to create space to hear yourself in this very loud world?
So I'll say what helped me when I came to a point in my life that I really needed to figure out who I was and what mattered to me was by considering my core values.
Mm.
I had done this exercise when I was a senior in college in a capstone called Women in the Workplace, which was quite ironic because 15 years later I was an actual woman in the workplace who needed to repeat it.
Yes.
And, I just went right up to Dr. Google and printed out, these lists and realized that although my moral compass had really always been the same, I had added things like achievement and success and elevated them above all else. I'd become this achievement junkie, and I thought success was simply defined as my title at my job. And then I started to think, how can I change? And I saw the word authentic on that list. And I was like, this is it. Like, if I can just be myself, if I can peel back the equation of my worth with my work, with my value, with how many hours I bill, I will figure out who I am.
Mm.
And I redefine success to mean harmony. So for me, really getting real with my core values and taking that ugly look in the mirror to say, you are someone who has become an achievement junkie.
Mm.
You don't think you have any value. Your worth is tied to your work. It is time to let that go. Look, it's still an evolving process, many years later, but that self-awareness of allowing myself to get real with myself and figure out what mattered has made a huge difference. I don't recognize, who I was before all those years. I don't.
Mm. I love that. And Jen, what I love so much about that you said is this permission slip that you're not going to have all the shit figured out all the time. And it is okay
Still
to
don't.
evolve. Yeah. Like, listen, I still struggle with that shit and I teach it. But
Right.
the gift of awareness and the gift to say, okay, I'm handling this much better than I once would, and I have the tools. And I thank you for that permission slip, because I don't think we talk about that enough.
Yeah.
Les, I'd love to ask you that same question, my sister.
Yeah. And so I had an answer, but then as I listened to Jen, I was like, if I'm going to be authentic, I better pivot, and then I can come back to my original part of my answer. So again, similar, right? Authentic, for an achievement, right? Big on that. But I came to part of kind of who I am and finding that identity, not by something I chose, which was by becoming a cancer survivor, right? And I fought that label for a long time because I didn't want it to be true, right? And I didn't want it to define me. But the reality is, it doesn't define me. It is part of who I am, right? And I can't change that or erase that. Which is why, again, part of the reason I ultimately decided to let that story go into the universe, right? Because it is part of who I am. It doesn't define me. But what I will say, and I talk in there about, the bitter sweetness, right? And over the years, it has become more sweet. There'll never not be the bitterness. But part of finding that sweetness is a choice. And what I can say is, I would still to this day wish it never had happened and wish it weren't true, because any ache or pain, my brain goes to the worst case scenario, and it always will. But what I can very much appreciate from that experience is that I am truly aware of the preciousness of life, and that it can be here one minute and gone another, and that none of life is not fair and nothing is guaranteed. And so that we have a choice every day, right? And as I go out and run in the morning and I see the sunrise or I see the flowers, taking in those moments, right, is life. And it gives you that, for me, a deeper, more fulfilling kind of life and existence. Now, back to your question around sort of how to get self aware. People who know me are going to laugh if they hear this and hear the answer, because it's not something I like. I have to get quiet. And when I get quiet, right, there's a lot of noise. And I don't like all that noise, right? And the distraction can be a really good thing. It can really help us kind of get through. It can help us achieve. It can help us be productive. Look, and those are the things they're the things I've gotten accolades for, right? Like, they're the things that, our society rewards. And so there's a lot of work that goes into, I think, kind of being able to get quiet and then have all the noise. But I am still learning how to get quiet, right? And to be quiet. And I can't do it for very long. I'm talking like 3 to 5 minutes, folks. Like, that's it.
More than me.
But 3 to 5 minutes, right, of being able to sort of check in, right? Where is my head today? What am I feeling? What's my emotional state, right? How's my body feel? And then overall, like, from a spirit and universe perspective, what's the message that I have for the day, right? Or the week, or whatever, and then how do I want to show up?
God, I love that. I was reading that the hardest thing for any human to do is to sit in the silence. Because, to your point, Les, man, it can be very loud. And 98% of the shit that comes up, you're like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with it. But the power in it. And I love when you said, listen, people, it's 3 to 5 minutes. The micro moment of silence. Love it. My sisters, I would love to ask both of you to give us a little sneak peek, a little salvation worthy moment into the chapter that you boldly and beautifully curated into the female anthology on owning your story, on empowerment, on connection, on courage. Please give us a little sneak peek. Jen, would you like to go first?
Sure thing, my friend. So let me just start by saying, I alluded to this earlier, this amazing anthology of over 30 women's
Mm,
stories was something that we took from the stage to the page, as I've been saying, based on Susan Freeman's Empowered Women event, where you have professional women get up and give this TEDx style talk, 15 minutes or so, about something real, not like this is how I got to the C-suite, this is why I'm so successful as an entrepreneur. Like, I was a sexual assault victim. I came to this country. I lost my job, redefined myself. So, Lesley and I really wanted to take the magic of that event we've all been and spoken and put it on paper. And a lot of the women who wrote, such as Lesley, took their story from the stage literally to the page, with tweaks. That was my plan. I was planning to write about authenticity using my story of, becoming a partner at a law firm, this dream for 20 years, and then realizing I don't like this at all and walking away. But when I went to put the proverbial pen to paper, I realized that wasn't the story that I
mm,
wanted to share in that season of my life. And I switched gears and I wrote about being diagnosed with a chronic condition. But the point of the story is really what I've learned about when life throws you a curveball. So you don't have to have been diagnosed with lymphedema, which I have, or some other condition to have hopefully the chapter resonate. It's about what do you do when something unexpected really happens? Or really, how do you get through this limiting belief that you have about yourself? And because as Leslie's heard me joke before, I'm very much in this baseball mom era of my life, using the curveball analogy. I say, well, here's how you hit a grand slam. You have to let yourself feel all the feels. You got to ride that emotional roller coaster. Because for me, that's what ultimately allowed me to find gratitude, which I had been missing because I was feeling so sorry for myself. Allowing myself to laugh, when the time was right, trying new things, and then actually being open to the lessons that the universe was basically trying to shove in my direction. So that's what I wrote about. And hopefully it does, resonate with at least one person or help one person. And I'm glad that I pivoted because it was cathartic and continues to be whenever I share the story, orally or when I write about it. So that's my chapter.
I love that. And you know what I got from that? This power of listening to yourself. Like it is right. It is so easy to, in how whatever room we show up into, to just act, say, do what we think we're supposed to. But when you can take a beat, like Leslie so beautifully said, and sit in a silence and whatever that looks like in the moment, hell, even if it's in a closet for like 60 seconds, to hear yourself, to think, what do I want to show? What do I want to share? God, that just, it hits different. And that's felt and that's palpable. And I heard that as you talked about your chapter. Thank you. Lesley, please share with us a snippet of your story that you took from the stage to the page.
Yeah, and I will just say before I do that there are many women in the book who chose to write about their stories and share their stories for the first time and had
Mm,
not yet been on stage. And so I just have the utmost respect, admiration, and love for them because, it's not easy. So my story is about my journey through cancer and survivorship. Um, and thankfully, I've been a cancer survivor for a long time now. But back when I was kind of in the early days going through it, resilience wasn't really a big thing. It is now, right? And look, I'm a lawyer and I'm a researcher, right? And I did all there was not a lot out there back at that time, right? And I really wanted to bounce back. I was like, forget this. I wanted it to have never happened. Let me get back to my old life. And the reality was that just wasn't happening, right? And so I had to find kind of my way through. And what I came to over time was what I call my roadmap to resilience, which are the 3 R's: reflect, release, and restore. And for different people, they can be in different orders. Like for me, it was because I live from my headspace, right? Reflecting was first. I had to really think through, like, why did this happen? Like, what does this mean? Right. And that didn't come easily. Like people could say, oh, is it, I, I think there are different aspects of it, but what I realized is trying to make sense of not necessarily the why, but what can I make it mean? I may
mm,
never know why, but what can I make it mean? is reflect, right? Release, right? I had lots of feelings from this, right? Jen said, feel all the feels, right? How can I, those negative ones get so stuck, right? How can I get rid of them so that that bitterness isn't holding me back, right? And get, so I can get more of the sweetness. And then restore, I talk about how, I went on kind of this like, let me do my bucket list. Let's travel. Let's, all this stuff. And I found it was awesome, but it was so draining, right? And I wasn't restored. And what I talk about is that doing for the sake of like productivity and checking off of our list is different from doing for the sake of being. And that just, for me, being, whether that's just being in the universe or being with my kids, for example, is what truly makes me feel kind of restored and peaceful. And so those are the 3 R's, and that's what I talk about in my chapter.
Oh, girl, it's a church service moment right over here. Reach. I would, I God, I can't believe we're at time. You know what? Isn't it crazy? 60 minutes when you're moving your body feels like 6 damn years, doesn't it? 60 minutes when you are
Yes.
talking to a beautiful soul sister friend having a kitchen table conversation feels like 6 minutes. And so, my friends, I want to ask you both because I know our listeners would love more of your beautiful nuggets and who you are and to dig into your chapters. Tell us where we can get the book and then tell us how we can follow you. So, Lesley, please go first. Where can we get the book? How can we follow you and stay engaged?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon. You can find it, Own Your Story, and it's in ebook or paperback format. You can follow me on LinkedIn, and I need to update it because I haven't done that in a while. Add that to my list of things to do, lesleymarlin.com.
Beautiful. And I'm going to link those both in the show notes, guys. So you can just click right on that bad boy. And the beautiful witch, I got to say, are those pineapple earrings, by the way?
They are. I had to be
Oh,
on brand, my friend. I haven't worn them all season.
oh my God. If you
Today seemed
guys,
like the perfect chance to wear them.
if you're not watching us on YouTube, you need to get over to YouTube and watch this because those are stunning, girl.
Thank you. Bauble bar. They're just fun and they're summery, and it's my first time wearing them. And it's already summer, so it's time. Thank you for noticing. Lesley, I'll also tack on that if anyone is interested in learning more about the events that inspired the book, to check out freemanmeansbusiness.com. You can find a link to purchase the book, but also to check out the Empowered Women's event. It's an annual storytelling event that rotates to a different US city every year. And for me, I am very proud to say that on jmtspeaks.com, I have added a very rudimentary page about the book. So this is an example of how we cannot let perfect be the enemy of the good, because it's pretty simple, but it's there. But that is where my blog is. You can sign up for my newsletter or follow me on LinkedIn under Jennifer Marino Thibodaux.
I love that. And thank you for shouting out Freeman Means Business. I got to tell you, Susan Freeman is the gift of a woman that brought us into each other's lives. And the way that we found each other was really just hyping for each other online and saying coming from a place of collaboration to say, I love what you're doing, keep sharing. And there is a lot of power in that. And so, my sisters, I highly recommend that you check out Freeman Means Business. I'm going to link it in the show notes. And I would also ask that you be intentional of the rooms you stand in online and hype for those women instead of being competitive, to use it as a chance to cheer for each other, because there's really something powerful about that. Right? I got to go back to Martha Beck because Lesley, you had talked about her earlier, and God, she's such. I'm going to link her to. Listen, she was Oprah's life coach. This woman is freaking amazing. The Way of Integrity is a beautiful book, and she had put this online this week, and it made me think of the both of you that I wanted to share with you. If you don't walk your true path, you don't find your people. And I thank you both for the courage and all the hard work behind the scenes and the army crawl that it takes to find and share your true path, because it allowed us to find each other. It allowed me to find you, and it allowed me the opportunity to share you with this beautiful tribe of other women. And I love you, and I cannot thank you enough for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Meg. I'm so, so grateful that my path has crossed with both yours and Leslie's. You're both gifts. You're my soul sisters. It's just an honor to have this space with you both today. Thank you for making it for us.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Love you.
So much
Love
love
you.
to both of you.